Yeah, my name is Jared Maxwell. I'm one of the co-founders and the partners of Austin Foodshed Investors. Just a quick overview of who we are and why we exist. How many people here are familiar with the slow money movement? Fantastic. Well, we were born out of slow money, basically. So I've been in charge of the slow money group here in town for a couple of years now. I've been involved with it for almost 6. What we did at Slow Money was try to get local sustainable food companies ready to receive the funding that they need. Well, over the last 4 or 5 years, the issue we ran into is we would do a lot of consulting, we would do a lot of work with companies. Now stuff that we're completely kicking to the city. Now that Jeremy and his group have a little more food focus and they have all of this stuff built in, that folks would get up there and they would get kind of ready to go, but there would be no funding in place. That got really frustrating. That happened quite a few times. So myself and my business partner decided to go invest in a couple of them. These aren't large deals. Our deals to date have ranged anywhere from $11,000 to $450,000. So, we're not a traditional angel network in that we don't look at, we'll look at multi-million-dollar deals, but that's not our preferred thing. So we got together and we decided quickly that between the two of us, we didn't have near enough money to go actually make an impact on doing this. So we thought we'd throw a little group together, folks that had some money, and start investing. It was not anywhere near that easy. There's a whole lot more to it than we really thought. We thought it'd be pretty easy, but we opened our doors January 1 of last year. I think our idea for the company even was on a bar napkin about 2 years ago. So we've been growing pretty quickly. There's been a lot more demand than we actually thought. Originally, we were going to be an impact investing network. We were going to invest in all of impact, so clean water, healthcare, all this kind of stuff. But we thought maybe we'd stay focused on food because 1, that's where our passion's at, and then 2, we thought maybe all of impact was a little broad. But then we were a little worried about deal flow. We didn't know if we'd see enough companies. We've had 6 apply, and actually we had 4 apply so far this month, just in March alone. So there's been a lot of demand for what we're doing. So that's been good. So what have we learned now that we've been in this whole food funding thing for, I guess, about 6 or 7 years now, and actually actively investing as investors and guiding others to invest in food companies for about 18 months now? We've learned that traditionally there's only been one way to look at financing. So how many of y'all have considered raising funding to date? All right. Out of y'all, how many have spoken to experts and mentors about how to raise funding? How many of y'all were told that you need to write a business plan showing that you need to be at $10 million within 5 years so that you could go raise a large chunk and get for equity in your company? Were most of you told to do equity? Good, because that's what most folks that come and talk to us tell us. They're like, well, I want to do equity, but then you've got a company that's got a revenue of about $1,000 a month, and they're needing $600,000, and they're willing to give away half their company to do it. And so that's when we have to sit down and go over the differences between debt and equity. Which one, a show of hands, how many of y'all would agree that debt is more expensive than equity? Not really sure. How many of y'all just don't know? Good, that's fine. So let's do a quick math problem for you. So you've got a company right now that say is worth $250,000. Say you're doing $100,000 to $120,000 a year in revenue. We'll give you a 2x multiple, possibly a 2.5x. These are just round numbers. So that's $250,000. You need $100,000 to go buy a piece of machinery so that you can triple your output and grow your company. So if you go the debt route, say you get relatively, say you don't get the cheapest debt in the world, you get $10,000. So you get $10,000 debt you have to pay back over 5 years. How much is that debt going to cost you? It's going to cost you about $20,000 over that 5 years, a little less. So say then that you go and you have, again, a $250,000 company and you need to raise $100,000. So you give away about 40% of your equity. Because on a true valuation or whatever, you give away 40% of your equity to get that $100,000. I'm sure y'all have seen on Shark Tank. This is how they work those kinds of deals. So then let's say you hit this out of the park and your company grows. And over the next 5 to 10 years, your company grows to doing $1 million to $1.5 million in revenues. Now based on the 2 to 2.5 multiplier, what's your company worth? It's about $2.5 to $3 million, right? Well, you gave away 40% of that $2.5 to $3 million at the start. So that money was really worth almost $2 million to you. So that's just something to think about early on whenever you're thinking, well, I can't afford debt. I can't afford it because it's too expensive to pay it back. I'll just give away part of my company because that's free. Well, it's free now, but it's not free later. It's, I was going to use an example, but it's the wrong room. But but that's just something that we try to think about. So whenever you're thinking about your company, you want to make sure you realize where you're at. And there's two things that you want to go on. One, you want to always start with the city. I agree with Jeremy. And the reason that I say that is you have to know where you're going with your company. You have to know what your plan is. You have to know your short-term plan, and you have to know your long-term plan. So your long-term plan is, what do you want to do with your company? What do you want to be when you grow up? So are you starting a CPG company that you want to grow and sell to Nestle? That's fine. That's what a lot of people try to do, and it's what a lot of people want to do, and that is perfect. Would you rather have a company that you grow and you end up doing for the rest of your life? You may not necessarily make the jam every day, but you own a jam making company that you don't sell to a larger, you don't get acquired by somebody else. If that's the route that you want to go, then how you set your funding up from day one is drastically different. And that's the kind of thinking that you need to do early on whenever you're thinking about funding. Because it's not just, I need $50,000 right now because I have to have this piece of equipment and I'll do whatever it takes to get it. Not if you need to give away part of your company that you don't want to give away later on. So that's kind of the biggest deal is start with the planning, talk to the city or talk to an advisor, talk to somebody about what your plans are. Where are you right now and where do you want to go? What we recommend in the way that we look at financing is we do what's called Bootstrap Plus. So Jeremy mentioned bootstrapping. That's borrow money from friends, family, buy the cheapest piece of equipment you can. If you're a chicken farmer, go to a neighborhood where they're building a lot of houses and get scrap wood and things out of the dumpsters and build your chicken houses out of that. I don't care if you have access to $2 million. I still think that's a good idea because there's no reason to throw money away. We don't need to. But you need to figure out what that's going to be like. So then once you do that, then work on this business plan with them. What the business plan makes you do is it makes you come up with that long-term goal. Who are you? Who do you want to be when you grow up? Why do you want to do that? And how are you going to get there? So that's all really important for you at an early stage, or really at any stage, because that business plan is a living document. It's going to change weekly. But whenever you go to talk to us, I can't speak for other investment groups. I can only speak for us in general, as we focus mainly on food and the intricacies of the food businesses. I like to joke around that the next Twitter will not come from a salsa maker. So food is not high tech, so you can't really try to look at the two from the same investment standpoint. So what we do is what we call small batch capital. And we came up with that because every single deal that we look at, we sit down and we go through this process and identify what is the best fit for financing for that business. It's based on a lot of things. What's your exit strategy? Do you have an exit strategy? What's your growth trajectory look like? What does your cash flow projections look like? Are you break even? When can you get to break even? Some companies that want to grow hyper fast and exit and sell to somebody, they never have a plan to break even. They raise money, they burn the money. They go raise more money and they burn the money. And they raise more money and they burn more money. The whole idea is you're increasing your valuation to eventually get acquired. That is one route to go. Another route that you can do is kind of the way that we propose, which is what's called Bootstrap Plus. And that is, if I'm not break even, then my first milestone needs to be, I need to figure out how to get to break even. Because once you get to break even, the whole world opens up to you. Because you no longer have to borrow money. You may need to, but you no longer have to. Your business will not die within the next 9 to 12 months if you don't raise another dollar. So there's different ways to look at the way that you do this. And the only reason I bring it up is because it all goes back to what you want to do with your company in the short term and in the future. So then if you're already cash flow positive, if you already break even, then what we recommend is identify a milestone. Do you want to get to $1 million in sales? Do you want to get enough revenue that you can hire a couple of key employees and afford it? What is that milestone that you want to get to? And then let's figure out how much money you need to get there, and let's go raise that much. Because as Jeremy mentioned earlier, the number one reason that businesses fail is lack of access to capital, right? I can tell you it's not only 10 times easier for me to help you raise $100,000 than $1 million. it's probably 100 times easier for me to help you raise $100,000 than $1 million. So to the extent that you can be more realistic about the money that you need, take it in phases, and do this kind of stair-stepped approach. If you go borrow $50,000, or give it, if you borrow $50,000 early on and you pay it back, and it gets you to your milestone, where now you've got a whole lot more traction and you look a lot better financially, and you need to raise $150,000. Well, you've already borrowed 50, and you're paying on it, you're performing, and you're growing, and you're meeting your plan. It makes it a whole lot easier to go get that 150. You go do that 150, it's going to make it way easier to go get 750 in the third round, rather than right out of the blocks, I need $750,000, even though I have really no experience. I'm kind of selling my product at the farmer's market, maybe 1 or 2 grocery stores. Let me have $750,000 because I'm awesome, and trust me, I'm worth it. So you really, it helps to build that. It helps to build that, and that's the only reason I put that out there. Is the thing that I relate it to is it's tough for us to go around to high school students and say, look, you can make it to the NBA. Because look, these 3 people made it to the NBA straight out of high school, and they did great. Well, yes, but does that mean that everyone should shoot for that? No, lots of people need to go to college. Lots of people need to go to the development leagues for the NBA and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with getting there eventually. It's a lot less risky, and there's a lot better chance of you succeeding in the end if you go that route. Now we could spend a whole day on what that actually entails and how there's a huge lack of that midsection support here in town, but that's a whole nother conversation. Let me see what all I had. That was kind of a general idea of how we look at financing. What we like to see, if you were to come to us and talk about raising some money, we love to see a business plan, but I'm not going to lie to you, we're not even going to look at it. We saw 4, like I said, we've had 4 companies apply this month. We can't really read through the business plans, and there's a lot of stuff in there that's more geared toward you and what you want to do with your company than it's geared toward me and why I think it's a good investment. So really the main things that we want to see from an investment standpoint is you need to create an operational plan. So to get to that first milestone that we talked about, not your end goal. I don't want to know what it's going to take for you to get to selling to Nestle in 10 years. I want to know, to get to that milestone goal that you've set, to get to break even or get to $1 million in sales or to get to whatever, what do you have to do? And break it down line by line. I need to do this. I need to increase my market exposure. I need to increase my margins. I need to find a distributor. I need to kick my distributor out and move it back in-house because I gave away too much margin points to get it. Whatever that is, build that operational plan and be very specific. Exactly what do I need to do to pull off what I'm trying to raise this money for? Because out of that, you can go in there and say, okay, so here's one of the things we need to do. Who's going to be in charge of it? And how much is it going to cost? Now, does someone on my team have the capacity to do it? Do they know how to do it? And out of those 3 questions, you will come up with a finance plan. I need X amount of money to execute on this operational plan to get me where I want to be. You will come up with an intellectual plan, the intellectual ask, which is there's key issues here that I don't have expertise in that I need to go address in order to make this happen. And then you'll also end up with the resource request. Do I need to go hire people? Can I third-party outsource it? Whatever. And then what all that does is that all folds into your overall ask. So then you can go to an investor and say, look, here's where I'm at. Here's where I want to be. Here's how I'm going to get there. And this is what I need to get there. These are the hires I need to make. These are the expertise that I need to bring on board. And this is how much money I need. And this is what it's going to go towards. And that makes it a very easy investment decision. Not, invest in me. I've got the next greatest thing. I'm going to be the next Epic bar. Give me $2 million and I promise I'll get you there. That's not going to get invested. So back to the homework, starting at the base level with Jeremy and working your way all the way through. So I would disagree that the number one reason that companies fail is because of lack of capital. The reason that they have a lack of capital is because they have a lack of preparedness when asking for that capital. So yes, they may not get the capital, and it may in the end be the reason why their company shriveled and died. If they'd have gotten a break even, they wouldn't have had that problem. But really the reason they didn't get the capital was because they weren't prepared to go after the money. And so that would be my recommendation to you guys is do your homework. If you need advice on this, you come talk to us. That's what we're here for. So we're a hybrid between an angel network and an incubator. So when we first started off, we were just going to be an angel network. We were just going to sit back, look at deals, and invest in them. What we found was about 10% of the deals that came through our door were actually investable, that were ready. The other 90% needed incubation. Whether we did it, whether the city did it, whether any of the incubators around town did it, whoever did it, they weren't ready for the money when they came in. They thought they were, and they really thought if they just had this $200,000, they would be the next greatest thing. But they're really not. So make sure that you think about it in that sense. Make sure you get all your ducks in a row and talk to us. We'll be more than happy to help. We have decided that probably 70% of what we do is going to be on the incubation side. We actually do a lot of consulting, a lot of talking with different people to come up with the optimal ask. A real quick, I'll give you one example of what we do, one example of how we went through this with one company, and then I'll open it up for questions. But we had one company come to us. They were selling about, 40 pounds of tea a week. They're a tea producer. They were producing and selling about 40 pounds of tea a month. They were doing sales of around $1,000 to $1,200 a month. They came to us, said they needed $600,000 and were willing to give up over a third. It was somewhere between 30 and 40% of the company in equity so that they could go grow and raise and take this tea to the next level. So we sat down with them, we looked at their cash flows, we looked at the market opportunities, we looked at their projections, we helped them refine it. What we realized was they didn't need quite that much. They needed about half that much, which is still a lot of money. But what we also realized was what they were doing was a perfect candidate for a USDA grant. So we put them in touch with a grant writer. Grant writer wrote for them. They got a $250,000 grant from the USDA, free money. In the end, all they needed from us was about $70,000 to prime the pump on those USDA funds. So they ended up getting almost $350K out of the whole deal. They got a very low interest $70,000 from us, and they're off and running. And then we expect to have them come back to us here in a while when they're at a whole nother level, and we can look at a whole nother investment phase with them because they're going to do great. But that's what we try to do, and that's what every investor should try to do for you. Not try to cram a round peg into a square hole, right? Not every investor should say, oh, you're a food company. Yeah, let's talk about a convertible note, so let's make sure that we get you into equity and we can work out these terms. Not everything fits into that. Every single deal should be looked at and should build a capital stack specific to that company. There's a lot of cheap money out there. There's People Fund. There's the family loan program through the city. There's local banks. Angels should be kind of your last resort because they're going to be the most expensive money. Doesn't mean they're not necessary, but what you should try to do is craft a capital stack that provides you with the lowest overall cost of capital to get you where you need to be. And that's what we try to do with what we're doing is we want to be a part of it. We obviously want to be a part of the ride and get our money back so that we can go do it again. But in the end, we really want to try to give the business the best chance of success. So that's kind of my take on investing and how to invest in the food companies, and from y'all's side, what we see as kind of most important and things to try to get together before you go and try to talk to investors. Biggest is just knowledge. Just know that you don't have to take the first deal that they throw your way, and you don't have to do a deal in a structure that doesn't fit what you're trying to do, just because they're the ones that are writing a check. There's lots of people out there that write checks. So, any questions?